where you are. That's it. Get on
the formula. This is Appetite for Distortion.
Welcome to the podcast, Appetite for Distortion, episode number 272. My name is Brando. A couple O authors for you today. Coming up later on in the program, Greg Renoff, author of Van Halen Rising. He did the Ted Templeman autobiography, the super producer who worked with Van Halen. So anything Van Halen, I'm going to Greg Renoff. And we're going to talk to him in Shotgun News because we haven't spoken about it on the podcast yet. The new North American dates for Guns N' Roses. Some rescheduled, some brand new, but concerts are here. And it's great. So we're going to talk to Greg about Wolfgang Van Halen opening for Guns N' Roses on those North American dates. I think it's an absolute home run, but I'm going to save my thoughts for Greg. But first, another repeat guest, another guy we've had on the show before, author Jon Wiederhorn. He is the author of Louder Than Hell, Raising Hell, Backstage Tales from Metal Legends, and now he has a new podcast on iHeartRadio called Backstaged, The Devil in Metal. So let's get Jon on the podcast. Hey, Jon, how are you?
I'm all right, Brandon. You?
I'm living the dream. Welcome back to the podcast.
Aren't we all?
I know, right?
Year.
Yeah, something like that. A dream or a nightmare, but still, I mean, things are obviously calming down.
I dream of going back to rock shows.
Exactly. That was where I was leading to it, and you just cut right to the chase. So welcome back, Jon. And I'm excited for your new podcast. I know you have a few episodes out already, but how did this idea spark to talk about the devil in metal? It seems so obvious, but it's not, I think.
Right. Well, I did a book called Raising Hell, Backstage Tales from the Lives of Metal Legends.
Right.
And that was done for Diversion Books. That was in the January of 2020. Yeah. And they decided to start a podcast division, and they got iHeart on board. So they went to some of their writers and said, hey, is this something that you would want to do with a podcast? Fortunately, I was one of the writers that came to. I said, I'd love to do a metal podcast. But we decided it couldn't follow the storyline of Raising Hell, or the structure of Raising Hell, because that was a bunch of anecdotes, piled one after another in history style. And I really wanted to do a narrative podcast. It was more like a true crime podcast. Okay. I love the way those start with a story and a very descriptive tale that starts in on a particular subject and takes it to its conclusion. So the first idea was, okay, when we thought of the devil in metal as an episode, it would be about tracing the occult in metal and what the first bands were that brought occult to this music form, and whether they were serious about it, and then through history, which bands were really embracing demonic occultism for empowerment, and which ones just used it as shock value or just to have cool looking skulls and upside down crosses on stage. And I found that really almost everyone was in it for the kind of horror effect, the way that Stephen King or Clive Barker uses horror. They weren't really Satanists. Some were. And I talked to some of them. We addressed the idea of the Satanic Panic in the 80s when parents burned their kids' record collections after Geraldo Rivera decided that this kind of music is evil for children and leads them to do horrible things. So with that as the idea, the whole thing can't be about the devil, but we love the title. And then really those kinds of people who watch Geraldo and believed in what he was saying are the kinds of people who think this is the devil's music. And if metal is the devil's music, then let's look at all the elements that go into metal. Sex, drugs, rock and roll, alcohol, particular bands and their influence, the rise of Black Sabbath, and the evolution of Judas Priest and how someone like Rob Halford, specifically Rob, I did a 2-part episode on Priest and Rob, and how he had this internal battle for decades where he was a gay man in a very, very macho heavy metal band in a time that was, both misogynistic and homophobic.
Right.
So he had to be in the closet for decades, and it tore him apart and drove him to alcoholism and ruined relationships. And yet he was the metal god. So he talks about all that in his book, Confess. But I've talked to him many times over the years. So he really opened up to me in a way that really complements what he says in Confess. And it's really powerful stuff. So there's a 2-part episode on that. And just all these things that are considered evil in metal are things that I address. And it's a tongue-in-cheek approach. It's like, this is not evil stuff. This is just the devil metal. And it has to be there to make the music the way it is.
Yeah, and you can see, especially in today's music, the imagery of just having skulls or the devil, and you can see it's kind of like tongue-in-cheek. It's not serious, but as you've discussed in some bands that were really into the occult, like Black Sabbath, Jimmy Page was into black magic, right? So I'm curious because I'm friendly with Doug Goldstein, the former manager of Guns N' Roses, and I'm actually I'm going to try to grow up to be you, John. I'm working on my first rock book. I'm working on a book. Yeah, I'm working on it with him, and
cool.
I'm not going to tell the whole story, but he was talking about how Alan Niven, the manager before him, and Izzy were really into black magic, and sometimes that would kind of scare the rest of the band off. So I'm curious if you had any, devil experiences or stories that you're aware of, whether it just be Guns N' Roses related but of that specific time period, maybe.
Well, first of all, I would be really shocked to find that Alan Niven was into black magic because he was a publicist for Black Sabbath before he became a manager, and he tells stories. In fact, in the Heroin episode, he tells an amazing story about touring with Guns N' Roses when they're in the airport, and Izzy and Slash are trying to get their heroin onto the plane to Japan. And he says, "You can't. No, you're carrying." And they're like, "Yeah, but just enough to get us, to get us to Japan." It's like, "No, you never carry on an airplane. Get rid of it now." And he said their idea of getting rid of it was doing it all at once. So the hilarity that ensues is both hilarious and it's not tragic because no one died, but people did, of course, die of heroin.
You know what? Let me ask about that, because that wasn't your first episode. It was a recent episode, right? That you spoke about heroin, and I guess that's the devil, to use it kind of metaphorically. What did you discover talking about the use of heroin and rock and roll? In addition to, we have the fun stories with Izzy, with Slash, but there are obviously very tragic stories.
Oh, yeah. Well, I was at Rolling Stone when Alice in Chains put out their last album with Lane Staley, and I flew over to Seattle to interview them there. And agreed to do the interview reluctantly, providing the whole band was on the cover, which the magazine didn't end up doing, not to my knowledge at all until after it happened. Really sucked. But to get to the main point, it was tough to do because clearly Lane was deep in the throes of addiction. And I wanted to report about how great this album was, but the album is also largely lyrically about drugs. And, I could see the pin marks in his hands and on his head. And clearly he was shooting up in numerous places. I addressed it with him, and he did, in a roundabout way, admit it and say, well, so what? That's not what anyone should have as their concern if I'm using or not. That's my business. If I make good music, that's what they should care about. And I agree with that. And addiction is absolutely an illness, and it's a terrible thing. And I don't think he wanted to die, and I don't think he wanted to overdose, and I don't even think he wanted to be a junkie. He couldn't help it. He could not tear himself away from it despite numerous attempts. And that's the tragedy. That's why we call the episode Absolute Evil. And I talked to Phil Anselmo, who has stories about, overdosing and being unable to function or kind of just going through the motions while hunting for drugs. And of course, Al Jourgensen is a big part of the episode. It's a 2-part episode, but I worked with Al on his autobiography, which was Ministry, the Lost Gospels, according to Al Jourgensen. And he's an amazing individual in that he survived heroin addiction, lived to tell the tale, is as funny as they come, and will tell you the ultimate tragedy that he went through about crashing cars and overdosing and almost deciding to blow his head off. And then the craziest, funniest things you've ever heard about hanging out with William Burroughs and Tim Leary and what he learned from them and the crazy experiences they all had together. So I really didn't want to glorify the drug, but I did want to point out that those who survive it definitely have stories to tell.
I appreciate you doing that. Not just talking about, of course, the fun, what could be the fun rock and metal, devil and metal, but mental health. That's actually kind of like a sub theme of my podcast, talk about mental health and addiction, because it is real and it does affect the rock community. Jon, I know you got to run. Thank you so much for coming back on the podcast. We got to speak again because I wanted to talk because it makes me laugh. I saw the recent controversy of Lil Nas X and his Satan shoes. And all I could think about was kind of like your podcast and all the real devil stuff and just whatever. We'll save it for next time. Thank you, Jon.
The devil's back, baby. Yeah, and pop culture is embracing the devil. It's weird.
Horns high. Thanks so much, Jon.
Thank you.
All right, now it is time for news. Time for shotgun news with Greg Renoff, who we've had on the program before. He's author extraordinaire, Van Halen Rising and Ted Templeman. His legacy, his work with Van Halen, and just what do you call him? A super producer? Is that how you phrased it?
Band Magazine called him a super producer in 1980, and so I felt pretty free to call him super producer on the cover of the book or whatever. Yeah, I figured, if they called him it, I'm going to call him it. If it was good 30 years ago, it's good now. So yeah.
Right on. And both books are just so well received, not just by the Van Halen faithful, but just the rock and roll listenership. So I appreciate you coming on because our worlds are colliding again. Because I think the first time I had you on was just to talk about Appetite for Destruction versus Van Halen's debut. But now we have news.
I got to tell you, I don't break Van Halen news. That's not what I do. But, whatever, there were some festival dates that were popping up for Wolfgang and here and that. And I figured, okay, that's what they're going to do. They're going to do a run of, they're basically going to, probably ease into it with some festivals in the fall. And then they'll go maybe tour indoors, maybe when the weather gets a little bit colder or whatever. But the announcement, I was probably as shocked as you or anybody else that they had come to be the opening act on the Guns N' Roses tour, meaning Mammoth, WVH, and Wolfgang Van Halen. I thought that was like super, super surprising. Not surprising insofar that I think it's a perfectly great pick but I was like, there was no inkling that was happening, so they kept it real quiet and it was really a cool surprise.
It came out of left field, as they kind of say, because the new Guns N' Roses dates are. Well, there's a mix of new and rescheduled. So the dates that were canceled because of that thing called COVID, you may have heard of it, a bunch of rescheduled dates. So are you going to any of the shows? You've been to Giants next. I used to call it Giant Stadium, but East Rutherford, MetLife Stadium, because I'm going to that show.
Yeah, I'm going to try to hit Dallas. So that's probably where it's going to work for me schedule-wise when they come through Dallas. There was some talk of me and my brother maybe going to Atlantic City. He actually saw Guns N' Roses there pre/reunion whenever they played some dates down there. And it's a kind of a smaller room, but it's a really, really cool space. But I think it's probably going to work out to go to Dallas. But yes, I have seen Guns N' Roses in the old Giant Stadium, now sadly departed for MetLife Stadium. I've not seen a big concert there yet, but that'll be a great place to see a concert.
because I was hoping to witness and experience Mammoth with you as well.
The future is not yet set, so who knows? Maybe I'll be able to make it there. But I am super excited to see this tour.
But I believe when it was announced that Wolfie's mom, Valerie Bertinelli, that she announced she's going to the Hershey, Pennsylvania show, right? Like, I'll see you guys there. I think she tweeted. I think that's right. Yeah. It's one of these tours that is actually going to have a bunch of stops. It's not obviously as elaborate as some of the tours were decades ago or whatever. But yeah, I mean, I think for most people in the country, it'll be able to be a doable thing where they can get to it. Where sometimes it's just like, not just Guns N' Roses, but anyway, like it's like playing Los Angeles, they play Boston, Chicago, New York, St. Louis, and it's like there's whole swaths of the country that don't get to see the band. So this is going to be great. Yeah. Hershey will be a relatively smaller venue as well. So that would be a cool place to see them as well. Have you been there? Because I'm going. I'm making the trip. Because I'm glad. I have not been to that venue. Okay. I have not. But it was like the late 90s that it ended up started doing concerts there. And so it's from what I've understood, it's a pretty good place to see a show. So yeah, you're going to hit a couple shows then. I'm excited initially because I was talking about it. I was hoping to see, because I am going to Chicago in a few weeks. And it just so happened that the original rescheduled date for Guns N' Roses Wrigley Field was supposed to happen during that time. Wow. And even though, and I did this, I try to do breaking news, Greg, but I don't know. I'm not Walter Cronkite. It is what it is. I called like the ticket master, like the rep, I believe, at Wrigley Field. Right. She confirmed it. Guns N' Roses has confirmed, right? I forget what her name was, Shirley. Yeah. And the next day, that's when Mammoth made the announcement. That's when Guns N' Roses made the announcement. Some dates changed. I was like, come on. Thankfully, I don't have like I'm not on like a big like TV news network where I'm like held to any real standards. It's like Snopes fact check false. I know from Brando. I would be off the air. Pinocchios or something like that. I said that from day one. I'm just that's funny man that works in radio and I do my best in journalism. I like when I grew up to be Greg. When I'm doing my best Ted Templeman out of play right now with Doug Goldstein. Yeah. Nice. Then when, that was my weird, see, when I sit down and write, I can get the words out properly. You would think that of a podcaster. Yeah. But no, I will get all my facts correct when during the book, and I'm inspired by you and all your feedback. Very cool. Yeah, Doug is going to have some interesting stories to tell, no doubt. He is all about David Lee Roth. I keep wanting to tell you. That's the thing. I'm like, I can't tell him yet. You gotta save it for the book. Save it for the book. Well, I'm looking forward to hearing it. Yeah, that's going to be great. I mean, that's a really it's going to be a rich vein to tap of gold in stories. It is. Well, let's we got to talk about them now because we're going to talk all summer. I feel because of now the Van Halen and GNR ties, but I thought it was an absolute home run. I was like, what's really going to get me excited other than just Guns N' Roses is back? Obviously new music, but you don't know. Soon is the word. But when I heard Mammoth was opening, I was like, this is perfect. Like this was just there's an excitement to debut this band. So I guess to ask you, who is in the band? I know Wolfgang made that fun video where he plays every instrument and he is the band. But so who's he going out with? Yeah, so I believe it'll just be the unit that he's had. He's been on television shows with as well. So I think it's going to be Frank on guitar, who played with Slash, and it's going to be Garrett Whitlock, who played drums for Tremonti, Ronnie Ficarro, bass, and then Wolfie, I think. Unless I'm missing someone, I hope I'm not missing anyone. I think that's going to be the lineup. Unless there's going to be another touring guitarist or something. I don't think so because Wolf plays guitar. So I think that'll probably be the lineup. And is that important? Because, obviously when we speak about Mammoth and when all the articles come out, it's Wolfgang Van Halen. And maybe Mammoth is kind of like used as a secondary term for us non-Van Halen diehards. Is there a reason why he went with Mammoth? And I'm sure he's spoken about it, but maybe you get your opinion. Does he want a band as opposed to being like a solo artist with a backing band and maybe members going in and out? Is it important to him to gonna have these guys? Is this going to be Mammoth for a while? You think?
Yeah, I think it is meant to be a band project, not just a Wolfgang solo project. And also, I just did a fact check on myself, and so John Jordan looks. I think that's hopefully how you say his name. Looks like he's the guy who's going to be. I thought there was another member who's going to be touring with them. So it's Ronnie, John, Frank, Garrett, and Wolfgang. I think that's going to be the touring lineup. So the band project. So yeah, my take on this is that, and I'll give you the backstory, is that I believe as far back as 2015, 2016, Wolf was writing songs and had song ideas. And at some point he decided he wanted to take on the challenge of trying to play all the instruments on the record. And of course, this is where we all can sort of recognize that there's musicianship, and there's like, you dabble in music, and then there's like the sort of like mind-blowing type of musicianship where you can be like, oh yeah, I can play bass, I can sing, I can play guitar, I can play drums, and that's Wolfgang. As we all famously know, Eddie started as a drummer, and Wolf has told this great story about how when he's young, I don't know how old he was, I should know, but maybe he was like 6 or 7, maybe younger. His father put magazines on a table and was like, do this, like hit this, go bump, 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 like, and try to see if he could keep time, and he could do it. And I think Wolfie, or maybe it was his mother, who told the story that Eddie was like, yes, like he's got it. He's like, he can, like, cause he was afraid he was going to be like, like he did, whatever. He didn't have the musical gene or whatever, but that was the first real sign. And then the interesting thing is that from what everyone says, and Wolf played drums with Tremonti, and his was pretty incredible. That's actually his, like, in theory, like his best instrument. Like he's actually like one of the most gifted as a drummer versus a guitar player or bass player. He's obviously great at those as well. And so I think that was the idea, to try to do the challenge of, I'm going to play all the instruments rather than bringing in guys to play on the album. Now, whether that continues in the future, I don't know if he's actually said. He may have said one way or the other, but I'm not sure that he's committed. I know he's talked about how he has more songs written that, from this long layoff, which, God bless him and his family. Part of that was that the album was finished. I believe it was done in 2017, but because Eddie's health was so fragile, that Wolf decided to say, no, I'm not going to go out on the road. I'm not going to, basically, he knows once he puts the album out, he's going to be committed to doing media.
Right. And
I presume as well, kind of putting his father under the spotlight health-wise, which he probably, the guy was quite ill, and I can understand why. It's not like his father's some unknown guy. It's like, everyone's going to ask about, how's your dad?
No,
how's your dad? How's your dad?
It was the right decision. I mean, it matters, but no, he did the right thing.
And so he basically put the shelf the project for the few years until it was, he felt it was time. And that was the thing. It was almost his father passed, and he's like, let's go, let's do it. That's what his dad wanted him to do, was to put the music out. And so, so that's going to be the touring unit. And then, I think the real question will be, what will it be like to watch these guys play a full set? I mean, they've done some TV appearances, and there's a live video they just put out, which is really cool, but there has not been the ability to see them play a full set. But these guys are all, seasoned. Frank played with Slash, which I think is also kind of interesting. I'd like to know how that, that's got to be part of the connection there. That's kind of probably didn't hurt, right? I think that wouldn't have made a difference one way or the other in some ways, but that probably didn't hurt to have that connection there as well. It's
Frank Sidoris on the podcast.
Yeah, and I think that's going to be cool to have that. I mean, in my dream, which we know, just because how logistics work on these types of tours, it's like Slash is going to come out and he's going to jam with Wolf or something. They're going to like jam something, like, they're going to jam some cool song or something like that. And like, Frank will be jamming with Slash again or something. But I mean, the thing I would definitely say that I'm looking forward to in terms of tours, hearing these songs in a live context, because, the way that albums are released now, it's completely different than it was when Use Your Illusion came out, where you had the lead single Don't Cry comes out, and that was kind of what would kick off the release of the record. Where now, understandably so, the new model for the new consumer demographic of music is to put out the songs. You've heard more than half of the album anyway, typically with any big release that comes out. So it's going to be, now that you have that familiarity with the music already, get the album, hear the rest of the songs. It's going to be cool. We've been living with some of these songs and like distance for months, and to kind of have that live experience is going to be really cool. It's going to be, I guess my point is it's different from sometimes if you caught a band early in the tour, you may have only had like the album when you're a kid for like 2 weeks or a week. Sure. You barely have time to digest the songs, and you're seeing the band. No. Yeah. And now you're like, oh, you've kind of lived with the music. So it's going to be cool to see the band play these songs that have been out and about for several weeks and months.
It makes me think Wolfgang he's so brilliant on Twitter, not just as a musician, but he's like, all the criticism I would get that like, hey, Wolfie, where's the music? Where's the music? Now you're giving me too much music. You're giving me the album already. It's like, what do you want from me? So he's great. He did
this article. He sat for an interview with Mark. I think it's Mark of Marcone of Spin, and it was really interesting to read what he had to say. I believe it was in this article, and if not, I apologize. Where he said, people tell me to turn the other cheek and like don't let the haters get to me. And he's like, you know what? He's like, I've been dealing with people being, let's say, less than kind since I was 15 years old. He's like, they don't let's go away. It's not like they're just like, oh, I said my one thing and then I'm going to start being, do something else. He's like, they basically, these trolls like sort of like hang on. And of course, Wolf had a heavy responsibility to kind of step into Van Halen. And then there's all that, we don't have to rehash that, but all the sort of, I would say band politics that went along with that. I mean, as Wolf has said, and I think anyone who's logical about this, he said it just in this recent interview. It wasn't like Wolf was like, I'm putting my foot down to bed. Either I'm in Van Halen or, or whatever. And like I said, like, okay, I guess you're in Van Halen. Obviously it was his uncle and his dad, obviously, who were like, it was the people with, a higher ranking in the band hierarchy who were making the decisions and basically said, would you like to play? And of course it's like, well, yeah, who wouldn't want to play with their dad? So, but it's a weird, it's also I'd say weird that it's alien to me and you, where you have both your parents are celebrities, right? You not only just have like one parent, you have both parents are celebrities. And so it's like, right. You grew up in this, and again, I'm just sort of imagining what it would be like. I don't know personally for myself, or I don't think Wolf's ever talked about this, but you're growing up in like a tabloid universe where like your parents are celebrities. And so like the National Enquirer is saying this about your mom or your dad all the time. It's sort of like
they go bad stuff too. It's
right.
Coverage.
It's right. It's
the way he handles it is brilliance. And I look forward to him tweeting on the road. I hope he tweets on the road.
I'm sure he will. I
get him live tweeting and be like, his set's over, be like, where's Axl? He's gonna be late again, or which Axl's not late anymore. I know. Don't have the GNR people come after me.
Oh, right, yeah.
Cheek he would do. Do you foresee anything like that though? Obviously, we were all like pontificating and just like we were playing like rock and roll fantasy sports in our brain. What could happen?
Well, I think Wolfie should be late. I think Wolfie should just like come out like 6 hours late and like make Axl wait till like 2 a.m. I know lots of your listeners had the same experience, but I saw them at Giant Stadium with Metallica, and I don't remember. I'm still trying to figure out exactly what time they came on. It was late, man. It was late. It was after midnight for sure when Axl came. It was kind of crazy. I know a lot of people dealt with that. I think, it's not unique, but yeah, it's like, it was not a joke. It was like a real thing for anyone who remembers, it was like, you get home 2:30 in the morning and like the union fees are getting overtime fees. Like, it's like New Jersey, it's like big union state. Like you can imagine they're like, and that's another $1,000 and another $1,000. Like every second or something they were late, Axel's like, I don't care. I don't want to play yet.
I think that was part of the reunion. Be on time. Like, you can't do this anymore.
Oh my God.
And Doug was just telling me about it. And he says what we all say. It wasn't even like groundbreaking. I mean, we'll read about like his conversations with Axl, but it's like, he has like a 4-hour rehearsal time. It's not like he's just, dicking around, whatever.
Right.
So like his prime like voice time is like 2 a.m. And then he goes out and he has a great show. And sometimes like he'll go out and like, why are people leaving, early? And Doug's like, it's a Wednesday. People work. Why do you think people are going home, Axl?
I love it. Yeah, it was crazy. But it's, it's a different, like you said, a different Axl, a different era. And, I'd also be curious as how long they get to perform. You know, the gun shows are, I saw them on the last couple of years. I saw them here in Tulsa, and they play more than 2 hours. If I remember, it was at least 2 hours. So hopefully 45 minutes, hopefully they'll get to play all their, you know, you have the one album material, and, you know, maybe we get lucky and maybe he premieres something new or something like that. Or, because, you know, the interviews that Wolf has done recently, he's talked about how he had significantly more finished songs than went on the record, because he had such a long, you had this crazy long time to work on a record that you were hoping to put out 4 years ago. And you've had, so there's a in quote unquote, in his song catalog, he has songs out that finished that haven't been released. So maybe we'll get one of those too or something. But I think it's going to be, I think it's going to be great for fans. And I think it's going to be, I have to expect it's going to be very, in some ways probably emotional, but also very cathartic for Wolfgang. Again, this is me just imagining what it would be like. You kind of like, the last time I was on a big stage, I was on it with my dad at the Hollywood Bowl. You know, things have changed. Unfortunately, he's passed away, and now we're stepping into a new chapter in my life, and I'm out with my own band. I think it's probably going to be, it's going to be a very, to be on tour for the first time like that without his father and without his uncle too. Let's face it. I mean, that's, you know,
that's true. He's all grown up. You know, he's got
as he said, like, you know, he's like, when people call him kid, he's like, I'm 30. You know, it's like, you know, it's funny. He's like, I don't know how old you think I am. I'm not 15. I'm 30. He's funny. He's funny. He is funny.
You know, I'll bring on the competition. He needs to start a podcast when he has downtime from the music. He's just, I don't know. He just has a future in entertainment. But then again, I mean, look at his mom. You know, so he can do both. He can act, obviously, and you know, personality, and obviously has the musician thing down. So, and
you know, look, and honestly, the thing too has been really refreshing for me too, is that, I mean, the rollout, the people working with him, his Uncle Pat, and some of these other, whoever else is on his team from Explore One Music, they've done a really good job. I know there's a lot of talented people behind him who are helping make this role. I mean, I think it really, considering you start from the devastation of losing your dad and then having to put music out, I think it's really gone really well, where they've had some really good opportunities for him to do interviews on Howard Stern, but also to be able to perform on a lot of different morning shows, other types of shows. And I think it's, you know, the videos have been, as you said, funny, entertaining. It's been a really great to watch it. So, you know, I just, again, I don't know Wolf personally, but you have to empathize with having that 2 years with a really, really sick parent. You're hoping it's going to get better, and it's just looking worse and worse as time goes on. And then to kind of have to kind of come out the other end of that and be able to kind of, you know, just do something that's sort of productive, where it's not, you know, you can kind of grieve and yet be feeling like you're moving forward with something that your dad would be proud of. It's got to feel good from that standpoint. Like, yeah, he would be, like he says, he would be proud. Any parent would be proud. Like, you know, you're going to be opening for Guns N' Roses. That's like, you know, that's just awesome. I mean, just, so it's really cool. And he's going to, you know, he's been on big stages before. I mean, you're 15 years old and you're playing with Van Halen. I think that's a baptism by fire. So you're good. I mean, nothing else that's going to happen on stage is going to be chopped that in terms of difficulty, I would think.
I'm a fan. I'm looking forward to, you know, just seeing his career grow where it goes. But I will say this, Greg, because I put in a request so far. It's like at the beginning stages. It may not happen. I'm low level. I'm not Howard Stern. But if I do get Wolfgang Van Halen on the podcast, would you be my co-host for that?
Well, I mean, there's no doubt. I would be honored, of course. And if Wolfgang prefers just to have you, I will not be. I will be. You know, he just wants to be a one-on-one. That's good too. But I would be honored to talk to him.
I would need you. I mean, you're the Van Halen. I have a Guns N' Roses.
That's where you got to pull the Howard Stern for you, the leverage. Like, you're like, come on, well, sorry, Wolf, you just can't come on with me unless Greg's there. Okay, well, if you put it that way, I guess all right. We'll have to be that way. Yeah, my dreams. Hasn't he retired?
Does he know who you are? Does he know?
Yes, I think he's aware of who I am.
Okay, all right, there you go.
Yeah, he's been very cool with me, I would just say. I'm appreciative that he understands where I'm coming from as a fan and as a writer and a historian, and I'm a big fan and just a person who has I would say a positive outlook on all things Van Halen. And But yeah, it's like, it's there's a, what did I say? You keep your friends close and your enemies closer or something like that. So it's funny. The one thing I would say about Wolf is that he watches, I'm like, there's like, you tweet and you're just like, he's going to see that. And it's not like I'm censoring myself, but it's like, I would just say this with all respect to his Uncle Pat and to Wolf, before they were like super active on Twitter and like on Instagram, there was a lot easier, like there's a lot less fact checking. It's like, I don't know if you guys follow people who don't follow Pat Bertinelli. So that's PB93. He's on Twitter and Instagram, and he's a very chill guy, but he also like will fact check people. They'd be like, there was one hilarious thread that happened where some guy was saying stuff and he's like, it's funny you put it that way. Here's the thing. I'm Uncle Pat. I'm actually Wolfgang's uncle. Valerie is my sister. And I was actually there when this happened. Like, so what you're telling me and telling us isn't actually accurate. We appreciate your input, but it was like, very, like you said it, and it was just like thread ending. It's like, okay, we're done. They having those guys there is like I said, it's cool. I mean, it's like, it's, as fans, when we were kids, teenagers, you couldn't imagine like you could tweet and like, like somebody like Slash could respond or whoever, or Axel could respond. You
see that I just randomly tweet at him? There's no reason. I'll be like, you up at the Axel? What you
You're right. You're hoping it's going to be like that famous Chicago rant. Like he's going to like put it in a video and he's going to stand with the microphone.
I know. I was going to be like at Axel Rose.
Some people at the Appetite podcast think that I'm, like doing the whole like Axel thing. Like
you figured me out. I want to be Get in the Ring too. I want to be
exactly.
I guess
Get in the ring too.
I was like at Axel ...
Oh, that's hilarious.
So you excited to tour? And my listeners always like tweet gifs about tumbleweeds because he's just not responding. Obviously.
Yeah, I mean, right. Yeah.
He finally tweeted this year. Did you see? He tweeted a picture, the logo of because they're playing. It's the kickoff show at the arena in Las Vegas, but that obviously Mammoth is opening up for. So he tweeted that. It's like a mix of the Guns N' Roses logo and the Raiders logo.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, it's cool. I mean, it's going to be great. I mean, yeah, it's going to be great. And I think, that's the thing I really is, circle back. It's like, it's really a pretty incredible moment for all of us as fans to be able to have like, it's like, like you have the ability to really interact with bands, whether it be Wolfgang or guys from Guns N' Roses who might or may not respond depending on their NDAs or whatever the word.
That's a whole other conversation. I mean,
yeah, no, I get it, but it's still, it's like, it's
being watched. You said you're being watched. I'm being watched.
No, I just and I'm not being critical of those guys at all. I'm just saying, like, there's like, it's like I don't really like to call those guys. It's like I know I'm much older than Wolfgang, but it's like adult supervision. Like Pat and Wolfie are like adult supervision, and like they'll just like kind of call people out and be like, that's not right, like that's not true, and you're being a dick, and thank you very much. And it's sort of like it's sort of like the schoolyard kind of gets in order. Like, all right, everybody, guys, calm down. Okay, this is getting a little out of hand. And those guys are super cool and have been just great. I mean, like they've always been great. And I'm most very, very excited to see, like you said, like and no offense to Ed and Al, they just came from a different generation where social media wasn't their thing, right? It wasn't the brothers. And so to have Wolfie be like so dialed into that stuff is great. It's really cool for us as fans where you're going to get pictures and you're going to get videos and like you just kind of know like it's going to be like, and again, not coming from like the media person, it's going to come from a lot of it probably he'll be busy, but he'll be delivering like cool stuff. Like you'll be able to see those guys warming up. I'm sure it's going to be like this. So that's going to be incredible. And I think it's going to be I think it's going to be as cool of a tour as we're going to get all year long. And honestly, after COVID and after how much that has sucked in so many ways, I was like, honestly, that's why when we first started, I said I was so shocked. I was literally really like, I was super, when I heard, I was super happy for Wolf and for his band, but also I didn't see that coming. I mean, just because they were filling out these festival dates, right? Because they were filling out these festival dates, and I just thought, okay, that's the plan. Because things are kind of still uncertain with COVID. When they were booking the dates, you're thinking, okay, they're going to do outdoor shows, do festivals, and that's cool. Like you figure, like most people are going to like kick it off in like 2022. Like some bands are doing that. Like obviously, they're just kind of punted everything, and I thought maybe that's Wolfie's going to they were going to like basically slow walk their way into the next year, which would make sense and understandable. But to have that sort of major major slot. It's great. It's awesome.
I'm looking forward to seeing it unfold, date by date, a couple times in person. Maybe, you and I will cross paths this summer. You never know.
That'd be great.
But at the very least, we'll be talking again, because this is just like you said, it's going to be a great tour to watch, and I'm excited. So thank you, Greg, for coming on, and looking forward to the next time we chat.
You're welcome. Anytime.
Thanks, Greg. So that does it for this episode of Appetite for Distortion. I will give you a preview of some upcoming guests. Roy Orbison Jr. will be coming back on the podcast. He was a great guest last time he was on. He made some, I guess, controversial statements about the Rolling Stones, and he actually texted me the other day, and oddly enough, I was thinking about him. And so I guess it's fate that we do a part 2. And he's like, I have more controversial statements. He wants to talk Guns N' Roses. He wants to talk about Buckethead. So it's going to be fun to talk to Roy Orbison Jr. again. And also, Danny Filth from Cradle of Filth. He has a new horror movie out, Baphomet. And I watched it as a horror movie fan. It's got plenty of blood and guts and gore and all the stuff that I like. So we talked to Danny Filth about that, and what the 6 degrees of GNR Bacon are to Cradle of Filth. They have a T-shirt called Parasite City, a nice homage, and they played some festivals together. Same bill. So we'll see what Danny has to say about Guns N' Roses. And another repeat guest, another guy I'm excited to have back on the show, Josh Todd from Buckcherry will be coming back on the podcast. Very excited. Buckcherry has a new album out as well. All this new music and none from Guns N' Roses yet. It's going to be real interesting once they hit the road. You're hearing, if you hear, like, I've heard some radio commercials about like an all new show, and they push that. Like, why say that? What's going to be new other than maybe a couple songs? Like, can you really bill it as an all new show? So I don't know. I'm obviously excited. I bought tickets to the 2 shows. And we'll see. We'll see if a third or comes as the summer goes on. But we're going to talk to Greg as the summer unfolds about Mammoth and Wolfgang Van Halen. It's gonna be a fun summer to hang out on Appetite for Distortion. So, what is the next episode going to contain? Who's the next guest going to be? It's going to be one of the names that I mentioned. It's going to be somebody else. Well, in the words of Axl Rose concerning Chinese democracy, you'll see it. I don't know if soon is the word.
Thanks to the lame ass security, I'm going home.